Hi everybody, this is Frank Caruso. I am the producer of Oregon Life at OCA Media. We have put together some really wonderful videos from past Oregon Life episodes. They're stories from our neighbors and around the community. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy these shows. This was a real treat. I got to interview an author. You don't often get to do that, but here is a top blue ribbon author, Ken Hansen. He's written a book, The Light of Our Yesterdays, and it is a fabulous read. It's a mystery, it's science fiction, and when I was talking to Ken, who is a brilliant tactician in terms of writing it, you'll see in the interview. I thought this, as a filmmaker, I thought this would make a wonderful film. And he said, whoop, let's get the book published first. Because when I interviewed him in Fitchburg at his home, he hadn't published the book yet. It was just about to be published. So anyway, enjoy this interview. Ken is an amazing author, and we're going to see more out of Ken in the years to come.
Hi, I'm Ken Hansen, and I'm the author of The Light of Our Yesterdays. I got the idea for the book back in 1999. I was looking to write a book that had some kind of impact. And I was talking to my wife, Jenny, about it at the time, and she said, you know, I would like to read a book about when Jesus came back the second time. And I thought, well, I think that's been done a little bit. But I thought about it, and I started thinking about it more. And I decided to write a book that had both our modern aspect with all the terrorism that was going on and flip into that the idea that there was a parallel world where there had never been a Jesus and yet there was still terrorism going on. And how would those two worlds play with each other? Then I really started developing characters, and I started thinking about, on both worlds, how would those characters relate? Because I didn't want to have two completely separate stories. I wanted to have two stories that came together. And so I really had to think about the characters and their development from the standpoint of how would that character do in this world, and how would a character similar to that do in another world, and how could I bring those two together? And then ultimately sat down and started writing out chapter 1 and went from there. You know, what I'd really like people to get out of this is, I could have just written a thriller, but I didn't want to write a thriller per se. But I wanted to write a book that was exciting like a thriller and yet made you think. That's what I think this book does. It has many of the components of a thriller, keeps the pace moving throughout most parts, but every now and then we'll pause and start asking some philosophical questions, some questions about religion, some questions about who we are as a society, the effect of religion upon our society. And I think those are important questions that we need to think about. And it's all tied together with terrorism and the hatred we see really day to day, not just between religious groups, but between nations, between political parties. And you know, it's interesting because my publishing company, Odium Odi Press, Odium Odi in Latin means I hate hatred. And that's what the goal of this book is, to get people to think about really the destructive power of hatred and how we need to stop thinking that way. I think that's really the goal of this book.
This next segment is just phenomenal. Michael Lewis, as I deemed him, the radio man, repairs, refurbishes old-time radios. He also teaches classes. Now imagine you're in in an antique store walking around, and you see this beautifully carved wooden radio, or maybe a Zenith, and Michael takes those things and makes them not just beautiful looking, but they play again, and you can tune in. And when I was at his shop, he was tuning in, and we've got radio stations on the other side of the country through these radios. It's really phenomenal. Have a look at the show. It's really, really amazing, and very thankful to Michael for having me in the house. It was wonderful.
And this radio runs only on batteries. You can't plug it in. Hi, I'm the radio man. Hi, I'm Michael Lewis. I've been restoring antique radios for about 40 years and teaching others to do this for about 30. I first got started actually in junior high school. I began repairing people's TVs and radios, which then were tube-operated devices. And I continued doing that as tubes went to discrete solid state, which is like individual transistors and diodes. And then things became run by integrated circuits and were essentially throwaways for consumer electronics, and that didn't interest me. So about 1977, I started going back in time and ended up by 78 working exclusively on what is now antique electronics, vacuum tube electronics. What I start my students out on is called generically an All-American 5 radio. 5 because there are 5 tubes, and those tubes are connected to each other in a string like old Christmas tree lights across the AC line, so a power transformer isn't needed. My students can learn the principles of restoring radios on a simple set like this, and then expand that knowledge into more complex sets. This was a 1954 transoceanic, and it's easy to see that there are a number of different bands or ranges of frequency which the radio can pick up. Those are selected by these buttons once the chassis is back in the cabinet. So these are bands which were used by radio amateurs, and that's why there were so many different broadcasting stations in these frequency ranges, which necessitated having the spread band. Thanks for watching Oregon Community Access.
Good morning, Torhorst Insurance. This is Randy.
Torhorst Insurance, this is Christine. How can I help you?
Torhorst Insurance, this is Chad.
Oh, hey, Sean.
Hey, Sarah. How are you doing today?
Oh, hey, Jerry. How you doing? At Torhorst Insurance, we believe in Oregon. And we also believe in the important service OCA Media provides for our community. Torhorst Insurance is happy to support programs like the one you are watching. Your locally owned and operated insurance agency, serving the needs of our community for over 40 years.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Bring it. guys. I'm late to dinner. My mom's gonna kill me. Catch you guys later.
Mom wants us home. Okay. Bye, guys.
You guys need a ride?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right. How about some one-on-one?
I gotta go eat, man. Sorry, I'll see you later.
So I love doing, well, I love all our interviews, but when young people are out doing things, it's just so inspirational. And for years, I would go to the science fairs with a camera and interview the kids with their science projects. And they're inspirational, these first graders and third graders and fifth graders. So several years back, I met this young man, Ben Lakuta, and Ben has a talent for drumming. I found that out later. He has a band. These young guys, and Ben, you know, I showcased on Ben in the interviews about Ben, but Ben is just so passionate about drumming. I mean, he was smacking on the pans on the kitchen floor, you know, way back when, before he could walk. So another thing to keep in mind, that I've been following Ben for a year now, and we're going to continue on into the year, and there'll be a longer show on Ben and what he's been up to. Of course, prior to COVID, during COVID, and now after. And that'll be an amazing show. So I'm proud of Ben and what he's doing, and here's the story. It's really cool.
My name's Ben Lakuta. I play the drums. I mean, I've been playing drums. I can't remember a time when I didn't play drums. I started by just banging on, like, I used to get all the containers in the house, all the plastic containers in the house, and I would set them up, and I even would take pot lids, classic story, right? Pots and pans. But I would take this one particular pot lid, and I would put a towel over it, and it would be essentially a hi-hat, because I could, you know, I found if I put the towel halfway across it, that it made a little bit more of a closed hi-hat sound, but if I took the towel off, it made a more of a kind of an open hi-hat sound. And so I did stuff like that for a very, very long time, and I drove my parents crazy with it because there were always these little marks on our pot lids. but yeah, I don't know that I can remember the first time that I thought, wow, I can actually play something coherent, because in my mind, and I think like in a lot of performers' minds, the audience knows every single mistake that you make. Right, that's a classic performer story. The audience thinks it was fantastic, and then you know you go backstage, and the performer's like, "Oh, that was terrible! I messed up everything. That was completely awful." Well, yes and no. To the performer, it probably was. To the audience, it probably wasn't. But you know, I feel like if anything, just now I'm starting to get to the point where I can actually play things coherently. If, you know, hard as that might be to believe that it took 15 years to get there, but it's the truth that I'm just now starting to feel like I actually can play things coherently. You know, growing up as a kid, when I heard Neil Peart for the first time, Neil Peart's the drummer for Rush. In fact, when I just heard the band Rush for the first time, I couldn't help but be drawn to it. There was so many, it was three guys, a bass player, a guitar player, and a drummer. And yet there were all these keyboards and backing vocals and all these sounds that I had no idea what was triggering them, how they had been recorded. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that three guys were creating a sound that is like, people can't rival it with a full symphony. You know, so it was immediately incredibly inspiring. And over the years I've just continued to find so many bands where 3, 4, 5 guys can create a sound that you never thought, that I never thought could happen. And I mean, they're doing all these crazy time signatures, and I mean, I could dissect so much great music. But at the end of the day, they're just great musicians. They're creating great art, and they're really, it might sound a little corny, but they're just so perfectly able to create their own human expression through their art form. So I never really considered Juilliard. In fact, I didn't even really consider the UW-Madison, although they have a great music program. Primarily for the reason that, okay, yes, there are a lot of music colleges all over the country, and there are actually a lot of really good universities that have a music school in them. But I wasn't really interested in going to a university where I'd have to spend the first 2 years doing gen eds and then I could do music. And I also wasn't, I've been trying to go to school for playing the drum set. I'm not trying to be like a pit orchestra musician. I'm not really trying to be a classical player either. I just kind of want to play the drum set. And it turns out that there's actually very few places that you can go and study playing the drum set right from your first semester. McNally was one of them. LACM was another one. MI, Musicians Institute, which is in Hollywood, that's another one. Berkeley's another one. But Juilliard's more focused on like Broadway and jazz and, styles that do involve a drum set, but not to the level that I'm looking for.
Over the side. Yeah, let's go! Thanks, man. Mary Lakuta back on the lighting board. And it's that Drew Lakuta helping out with that as well. Supply hot dogs! Gotta take these.
I order. You order what? Feed me! You can talk. I got a talking plant.
I wonder if there really are people on Mars.
Well, who knows?
This is Chief Jenny Pagenkopf with the Oregon Police Department. You're watching OCA Media.
This was great. Alex Staley. So I came upon him. Someone sent me an email and said, Frank, this young man does woodwork. And I said, well, let's do this. Let's talk to him. So I went to his house, and he's got this amazing shop in his basement. And he you see a piece of wood on the ground, a log, and Alex turns it into something so magnificently beautiful. From tables, end tables, he makes these game boards. these phenomenal cutting boards, usable, by the way, usable cutting boards. And he has grown. In the talk, he talks about how he started and what he's done and where he's going. And again, the passion is phenomenal. Enjoy this story. It's really wonderful.
Well, my name is Alex Staley. This is my new woodworking shop for my business, Staley Woodworking. I've been a woodworker for maybe 12 years, starting very casually. But the real introduction to my woodworking career kind of started in my senior year of college. We were at a bar in Milwaukee and playing shuffleboard, and I probably overconfidently thought that I could build a shuffleboard table, not knowing exactly how difficult that was. But I stuck with it, and 200 plus hours later, I built what I thought was a pretty cool shuffleboard table. So this is my shuffleboard table. It also incorporates what I consider my style of gluing up different hardwood pieces and using that to add to the look of a table. So like on the sides here, the main wood here is hickory. This all started as one piece. I then glued up or inlaid, but it's an edge glue, this mahogany to add some red to the tan of the hickory. This is maple on top. It's kind of a banding to give a little bit of width to the top of the table. And then this is a decorative softwood piece that I had to dado into the hickory that I thought just added a nice cool little look to the edge of the table. These score pieces here were one of my more proud creative add-ons to this table. But these are handmade little circles that you can slide to keep score. So you play shuffleboard up to 15. And I dyed the 5th score piece on every one, so you can kind of easily keep track of what number you're at. But they just slide on a brass bar, and you can keep track of your score right on the side of the table. After college, I just decided to totally disregard my degree, and I got a woodworking job at Workbench and Tool in Fitchburg, just a lumber mill and a custom trim shop. And I ran some heavy machinery there, and that was a great starter job for woodworking. From there, I moved to an artist shop in Paoli, Richard Judd Furniture. He's an extremely talented furniture maker. He makes curved veneer furniture, and I learned a lot from him, and he's just the nicest guy in the world, and really enjoyed working there. But I had a real passion for working with solid hardwoods, which led me to a job at the Wood Cycle here in Oregon, where I worked for 5.5 years. And there I really harnessed my skills as a woodworker. I became more talented. I learned an instrumental amount to the woodworker I am now. And now I have my side business, Staley Woodworking, in my house that my girlfriend and I bought a year ago. And this is my dream shop down here now. So these tables have something I had never done before using these tables, and it's called a through wedged tenon. So these 3 kind of horizontal anchors to this table, they go all the way through this leg, a mortise and tenon joint, and then there's a small wedge piece that when I glue these legs together, I have a small cutout in this cherry side horizontal piece here, and I hammer a wedge into here, and that expands to the through tenon and provides a really tight joint on the leg. So it's partially for looks, but this table will last generations due to the mortise and tenon joinery on all the joints, and it also has that very cool look to it. So this is one of my most recent pieces, and I think it's one of my favorite pieces I've ever made. It's, I would call it a hall table or a sofa table. It's a little bit taller, not as deep, and wider. I really loved the design. The woods that it's made out of are 2 just absolutely gorgeous woods. They are Bubinga, which is the top, and then curly maple, which is one of my favorite woods. I had this piece of lumber hanging onto it for years, maybe 5 or 6 years in my shop, because I could tell that it had some of the coolest grain I've ever seen in my life. You can call it figured grain or curly grain, but it's highly figured Bubinga. So all of my curves and all of my furniture, and I love incorporating curves, they are all carved. So I don't bend anything, at least I haven't yet to this point, but all my curves which I incorporate, I cut on a bandsaw to get the curve, and then I sand it really smooth from there. And that you can add endless curve perceptions, and like I said, that's really one of my favorite pieces to incorporate.
How do you know that you have not that you've sanded enough so when you shellac it or varnish it, that those scratches aren't in there? Because there aren't any in there from the wood sanding from sandpaper. How do you know that?
Right. So experience is key, but what I learned going through the process was you always have to start with a low grit. Whether this board was run through a planer where it gets knife marks from the steel in a planer, or it's run through what we call a wide belt or a drum sander, you're gonna have some heavy duty machinery marks before you start hand sanding this top. And the key is to start with a low grit, like 100 grit or 60 even, to get rid of those big machine marks. And from there, and you really learn this through experience, how much time it takes, what grits to use, you just work yourself up to a grit that you feel comfortable with, won't show up on a finished product. And you can kind of use some tricks like lighting, looking at the table and kind of direct reflective lighting to see if you have sanding marks. So most of my business is traveling around to art and craft fairs in the area. It's how I started selling things, and it's how I've really grown my business, and still is by far the biggest part of my business, traveling around to different local ones mostly. Probably my most popular items to sell are smaller things like jewelry boxes here. Cribbage boards have become popular in the last couple of years for me. I absolutely love making cutting boards because they can fit my style of using different contrasting hardwoods. So like this one has the white maple, this red padauk, this black wenge, and then black walnut. I've made a lot of cutting boards, and I still have a lot of fun making them. Endless designs you can use with them. This is a wine glass holder. Just a fun decorative piece that makes a really good gift with a bottle of wine. And then I bring my tables to, this piece is zebra wood, a very cool grain, also a coastal African wood species. And I think it blends really well with black walnut. And I call this my pedestal table. It's perfect for next to a chair. It doesn't hold too much. Doesn't take up too much space, but it can hold a cell phone, coffee, TV remote.
I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. We are very thankful for them for supporting Oregon Life and other OCA Media shows. Also our viewers who email me, watch our shows, stop me on the street and say, hey, I really love that show. It's so inspiring. It's great to hear about young people. It's great to hear about what people are doing in and around the community. So we're thankful for all those people. And if you know someone, or if you're someone who has a story, you may not think you have a story, but there is a story there. And remember, it's all about inspiring others. So we'd love to hear from you, so contact us. There's a link below.